When you think of Halloween, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's the image of kids dressed as superheroes and monsters, excitedly shouting "trick or treat" as they go door to door, their bags getting heavier with candy. It feels like a timeless childhood tradition, a night of pure, sugary fun. But have you ever stopped to wonder where this strange and wonderful ritual actually comes from? Why do we dress up in costumes and ask our neighbors for candy, with the playful threat of a trick if they don't comply? The answer is a fascinating journey that takes us back over 1,000 years, to the foggy landscapes of medieval Europe and the ancient beliefs that once governed the changing of the seasons. The modern, commercialized event we celebrate today is a direct descendant of two distinct yet related historical practices, souling and guising. Let's start with souling. This was a Christian tradition practiced in Britain and Ireland during the Middle Ages. On All Hallows' Eve, which we now call Halloween, the poor would go from house to house, a practice known as souling. They weren't asking for candy, they were offering something far more spiritual. In exchange for food, specifically small, spiced soul cakes, they would promise to pray for the souls of the household's deceased relatives. This was deeply tied to the Catholic doctrine of purgatory, a place where souls of the departed awaited purification before they could enter heaven. It was believed that the prayers of the living could help speed up this process. Each soul cake eaten was thought to represent a soul being freed from purgatory, making it a solemn and spiritually significant exchange. At the same time, another tradition was taking shape, particularly in Scotland and Ireland: guising. This practice had roots in the even older Celtic festival of Samhain, when the veil between the living and the dead was believed to be at its thinnest. To fool or ward off the wandering spirits, people would wear costumes and masks, disguising themselves as ghouls, ghosts, and other supernatural beings. Young people, known as guisers, would go door to door, but instead of offering prayers, they offered a performance. They would recite a poem, tell a joke, sing a song, or perform a little trick of some kind. If the homeowner was entertained, the guisers would be rewarded with a treat, like fruit, nuts, or coins. When millions of Irish and Scottish immigrants came to America in the 19th century, they brought these traditions with them. Over time, souling and guising began to merge. The religious solemnity of souling faded, while the costumed, performance-based fun of guising took center stage. By the early 20th century, however, the trick part of the tradition had taken on a more mischievous meaning. Halloween became known as a night for pranks and minor vandalism. To curb the chaos, communities began to organize the activity, essentially bribing the potential pranksters. The deal was simple: we'll give you a treat, and in return, you don't play a trick on us. The phrase "trick or treat" began appearing in print in the 1920s, and by the late 1930s, it was a household expression. After World War II, with the rise of the suburbs and a booming consumer economy, trick-or-treating was transformed into the family-friendly, child-focused event we know today. Candy companies seized the opportunity, marketing individually wrapped sweets perfect for handing out. The homemade soul cakes and gifted apples of the past were replaced by a mountain of chocolate bars and lollipops. The trick became an empty but fun threat. So, the next time you see a group of kids on Halloween, remember their journey isn't just around the block. It's a tradition that has traveled through centuries, from a prayer for the dead to a performance for the living, and finally, to a simple, sweet request for candy. By the 20th century, Halloween in America began a dramatic transformation, shifting its focus from warding off mischievous spirits to fostering community fun. In the early 1900s, the holiday was often marked by pranks and vandalism. To curb this rowdiness, civic groups and parents started organizing citywide celebrations, parades, and contests. This push for a safer, more controlled Halloween laid the groundwork for the traditions we know today. After World War II, the rise of the suburbs and the baby boom created the perfect setting for a child-focused holiday. The practice of trick-or-treating, which had existed in various forms, became widely popularized in the 1950s. It was a brilliant solution, a structured activity that channeled youthful energy into a friendly, door-to-door ritual. Mass media, through television specials and magazines, cemented this wholesome, family-friendly image of Halloween in the American consciousness. It wasn't long before businesses recognized the holiday's immense potential. What began with candy companies marketing their sweets for trick-or-treaters soon exploded into a full-blown commercial phenomenon. By the 1970s and 80s, Halloween was no longer just for children. The market for adult costumes and elaborate parties began to surge, turning the holiday into a major social event for all ages. Today, Halloween is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States alone, second only to Christmas in holiday spending. This commercial empire is built on several key pillars. There are the costumes, which have evolved from simple homemade creations to intricate, pop culture-driven outfits for kids, adults, and even our pets. There are the decorations, transforming suburban homes into ghoulish graveyards and haunted manors. And then there are the professional haunted attractions, which have grown from small-town spook alleys into massive, high-tech scream parks. And of course, there is the candy. An astronomical amount is sold each year, making Halloween the sweetest holiday on the calendar. From the joy of a child sorting through their trick-or-treat haul, to friends gathering for a horror movie marathon, the modern holiday is a tapestry of shared experiences. While it may seem far removed from its ancient Celtic roots, the core spirit of confronting the dark and mysterious, albeit in a fun and festive way, remains very much alive. So why do we celebrate Halloween? The answer is a 2,000-year-old story, weaving together Celtic ghosts, Roman harvests, Christian saints, and a whole lot of candy. It all starts with the ancient Celts and their festival of Samhain, which marked the end of the harvest. They believed that on this night the boundary between the living and the dead blurred, allowing ghosts to return to Earth. To ward off evil spirits, they lit massive bonfires and wore costumes for disguise. When the Romans conquered Celtic lands, their traditions merged with Samhain. They brought a festival honoring Pomona, the goddess of fruit and trees, whose symbol is the apple. This likely introduced the tradition of bobbing for apples to the celebration. As Christianity spread, it absorbed pagan rites. The Church moved All Saints' Day to November 1st, making the night before, Samhain, All Hallows' Eve, which later became Halloween. A new tradition called souling also emerged, where the poor went door to door, receiving soul cakes in exchange for prayers. This was the direct ancestor of our modern trick-or-treating. So how did we get from soul cakes to candy? Irish immigrants brought their Halloween customs to America, where the holiday became more of a community event. But it also became a night for pranks. To curb the mischief, communities promoted organized trick-or-treating. Candy companies seized the opportunity, and by the 1950s, mass-produced candy became central to the holiday. Even the jack-o'-lantern has a winding history. The tradition comes from an Irish myth about Stingy Jack, who was cursed to roam the earth with only a burning coal and a carved-out turnip. The Irish carved scary faces into turnips to frighten him away. In America, they discovered the native pumpkin was much easier to carve. So, Halloween is a true cultural mosaic, constantly evolving by blending ancient fears with modern fun. From Celtic bonfires to candy corn, it's a night that allows us to find light in the darkness, community in the cold, and a little magic. This has been WhyOWhyTV. Subscribe so you never stop asking why. And next time, we'll chase another mystery that haunts our everyday lives.